Well, hello. We're ready to do another guide profile showing another one of our Boston by Foot tour guide volunteers. And today we have with us Dan Keating. Hi, Dan.
Good morning, Katrin.
So I was wondering if you could share a little bit with folks a bit about you and where you're from or where you live here in Boston
Sure.
and
Yep.
how long you've been a Boston by Foot volunteer.
Okay, I'll start with the last question first, which is I'm going into my fourth year, which seems hardly possible. So I've done 3 full years, and I've enjoyed every one of them. I am a Boston native. I live now in Melrose, which technically isn't Boston politically, but as a practical matter, everything around Boston is Boston. And so I've lived here my entire life. I love traveling, but I love the city, and so that's my background. I'm 68 and I've spent 68 years here.
Oh, fantastic. We have so many volunteers from so many different parts of the world and the country, and it's great to talk with you, who's, like you said, Boston native, born and raised here. And so I was wondering if you might share a bit kind of what inspired you to become a Boston by Foot volunteer and what you enjoy about volunteering here.
Sure. So an interesting thing happened. So as I said, I've been here forever, and I realized about 10 years ago that I knew a lot about the area, but I hadn't been paying as strict attention as I might be. So I started even before I joined Boston by Foot to explore the city on my own and to just start learning as much as I could about it. And I can't remember exactly how I stumbled across Boston by Foot, but I had a desire when I stopped working to get out and to provide tours. I came upon the organization. It sounded like a perfect fit. And so basically it combined something I love. I love meeting with people, I love presenting, and I love the city. Boston by Foot lets me combine the three of those on a regular basis.
Well, we're so glad you found us and are part of our Boston by Foot community, Dan. Because my next question is, you're very involved here at Boston by Foot in many capacities, and I was wondering if you could tell folks a little bit about your involvement and the different volunteer roles or positions you have, and
Yeah.
so on.
Yeah, so sure. I mean, it's an interest. I didn't anticipate it. My thought was I would join it. I would conduct a tour. But once I got involved with Boston by Foot, I realized that this is a community of people um, with a lot of shared interests, right? And a similar love for the city that I had. And so I very much believe in the mission of it to tell the diverse stories of Boston. And again, I've learned so much since joining Boston by Foot. Uh, and so I figured rather than just give tours, I'd do other things as well. So I joined the Academic Affairs Committee. That ultimately led me getting, I don't want to use the phrase roped in, but let's just say that, involved this year as a co chair, which has been illuminating because the Academic Affairs Committee really takes a look at how do we bring new guides on. And I think that's an important process. Uh, and I don't know, I'm trying to, what else do I do? I mean, I love the variety of tours that I've been able to learn since I came on board. I really love the Heart of the Freedom Trail and Road to Revolution. I've moved away from those over the last couple of years. I still do them, but in this year I plan on doing at least two and maybe three new tours, which is I think one of the great things about Boston by Foot. There's so many. If you want to expand your interest in your scope, once you get through your first year, have at it.
Well, yeah, that the wide range of tours is so cool. And I know you last year you worked was it Kendall Square with one of the new tours in the tour development committee, and then you've also
Right, yeah,
been working
right.
on
And that's
even
the other thing,
revising a
yeah,
tour too.
working with people developing tours, and I'm trying, Katrin, honest, I'm still working on a Charlestown tour. It's a lot of work, but a lot of fun. But being involved in that process is another thing, right? These tours are all developed by volunteers at Boston by Foot, and to be involved in that process, and you'll have that opportunity, I think, coming out of the gate, Katrin, if they would like to get involved.
Yeah, so any volunteer can decide they want to be part of the tour development committee, and there's lots of different ways folks can get involved. They can propose a tour, they can be, read a tour that somebody else is developing. They can go
Right.
on walkthroughs. They can be a co-guide. Yeah, tour development, like you said, Dan, is very volunteer driven here, with a lot of support and great community. So yeah, we're excited when folks get involved in that. So that's great.
Good.
And you mentioned, you've given a range of tours here at Boston by
Yes.
Foot, and I was wondering if you had a special memory from a tour or something else about a memorable experience you had either guiding or from a person on your tour that you'd like to tell us about.
Interesting. Um, I guess I'll tell you one of my favorite tours. It was a husband and wife. He was a dentist down in Florida, down in Tampa region, with their two sons. One was in the military and was on leave, and the other one I think was still in school. It had turned out that was just the four of them and me. And it was what I loved about it is I think it was the first tour I did where I was able to actually be intimate with the group and just sort of relax and it was early days of my experience, and it was just that connection. It was probably the first time I made like a full connection with the group, and so it stopped feeling like I was providing a tour. It more felt like I was walking around the city that I love and sharing that experience with them in a very real way. So that's probably been my most memorable, and I've had that a couple of times since then. And obviously that's easier when you have a smaller group to connect fully, but you can do it even with a larger group. And I guess that's it, Katrin, to the extent that you feel that connection, it's a pretty good feeling.
It is. It's such a special feeling when it happens, and thank you for, sharing kind of that first time you had it. I agree. It is I think something special about being a tour guide and exploring the city in that, like you said, intimate, close way with a group. And, Boston by Foot where we have kind of the smaller groups generally, even more
Yes,
opportunities to do it. So, yeah, I heard that from a lot of our volunteers. It's just such a great it is. It's a
it
really great
is.
way to explore it with different people. I love it. Um, and you mentioned too that one of the things that brought you to Boston by Foot is, you kind of wanted to get to know the city on a deeper level. And I was wondering if there's something you now notice about Boston because of your Boston by Foot experience as a volunteer. Or, maybe there's something that, tour groups are surprised to discover out Boston, when you're taking them around.
Um, yeah, I guess. That is a really that's the hardest question you've asked me. So I guess I've gained an appreciation of the breadth of the things of interest in to do in the city, right? I mean, the number of tours that we have, it's not, like I said, it moves away from Heart of the Freedom Trail and the revolutionary history, which is great. Uh, but it goes so far beyond that to the immigrant experience. And it made me, I guess Boston by Foot has made me realize how many stories there are, how many Boston stories actually exist, and I really feel like how few of them I know Lynn Johnson just published an article in the Globe about a building that was on the Boston Common. Didn't even know it existed. Didn't know the background story behind it. So I think that's what Boston by Foot has done for me. It really has opened my eyes to things about I'm going to say my city, not that I own it, but my city that I didn't know, and that as a consequence, I've been able to gain a greater appreciation of.
Yeah, there's so many new stories being uncovered even
Right.
every day too. I think that's
Correct.
amazing. There's so much we still don't know about Boston and are learning all of the time. And guides like
Absolutely.
yourself are incorporating into their tours, so
Right.
every tour is unique and building on our new knowledge. I love that too. Um, and so I also remembered that you are on the virtual program committee too, and are working on a virtual program.
Yes, I
Dan,
am.
you're just
Yes.
involved in so many ways, and we just gotta remember as we go along. Maybe you'd like to share a little bit about your experience with virtual programs too.
Yeah, so this was interesting. I had heard about them and I knew they were in the off season and I had attended a couple and it just happened by chance. One day I was doing some research on another tour, the architectural cruise, and there was a Wikipedia article about the tallest buildings and I was looking at information on the buildings on and at the bottom it said Boston's tallest buildings through time. And I never really thought about that. And so it was a list of which were the tallest buildings as in Boston from back at the beginning, well, not quite the beginning, but to today. So that's the tour that I put together. So just a little information about the building, how tall it was, but more importantly, why the building was built, where it was built, and what Boston was like. what drove that building to be built at that time in that way. Uh, I have so much fun researching and putting that together. It'll be daunting. I'm doing it next week, and I'll confess I'll be glad when it's done. It'll be another thing off my plate, but I enjoy it. And so yeah, that's another thing that you can do, and you can take your time doing that and working on it. They're only 45 minutes, right? I mean, you don't have to have a deep set of content. But that's another opportunity for you to get involved with Boston by Foot and to reach a sort of a wider audience than you can on a single tour.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, virtual programs we started during the pandemic and then realized, like you said, we're a great way to reach a wider audience, engage folks in this diverse history of Boston, and give volunteers another way to, research and have fun and do different things too. Now, you shared that, a lot about your volunteer experience here at Boston by Foot. You also mentioned you're retired. So when you're not here with us at Boston by Foot, what do you like to do? What are your some
What
of
I
your
love to
hobbies,
do. So
Dan?
so every day without fail, I take my dogs into the woods, right? So that's how every day starts that. Well, it doesn't start that way because it's too dark when I get up, but that's one of the first things I do. The other big commitment I have is I'm on the board of trustees for Malden Catholic High School. Though I'm finishing my ninth year, and quite frankly, I'll be glad to be done with that aspect of it. But I also help coach their mock trial team, which is I spend an awful lot of time. Now's our busy season. We just had a trial, as Katrin knows, on Wednesday. We prevailed over at the Moakley Courthouse. So it's just great to interact with kids, and some of them are as young as 14. We had two performers who were 14 years old, and they got into a U.S. federal district courtroom, and just so if you're daunted at all about giving tours, think of those 14-year-olds. I'm amazed at them. So I spend an awful lot of time doing that, and then reading about history and and researching. But that between Boston by Foot and Malden Catholic and yeah, and my family, that keeps me busy enough.
Yeah, that is a very busy busy retirement, but that sounds like great. And yeah, I know you shared with me a bunch about the mock trial stuff and those kids.
Right.
It sounds like they have an amazing experience and learn
They
so
do. They
much.
work so
And
hard, and
they
they're
work
just
really
yeah,
hard. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, Um, and so yeah, as we wrap up our guide profile today, is there anything else you would like to share about yourself or your time here with us at Boston by Foot?
Uh, not about myself, but I will make a pitch because honestly, like I said, I just started off figuring, all right, I would do a tour, and as you said, my involvement has grown, and I think that's happened because I do think Boston by Foot is a great place if you want to learn how to give tours, if you want to learn more about Boston. It's a great, and I'm gonna use the word community. I know it's overused sometimes, but it is a community. I've met a lot of people that I consider my friends. One of the other things I did was help lead the small groups that help train the guides in training. And from that, you build a special relationship through that. You'll see it if you guys join Boston by Foot. We're gonna teach you how to be a guide. That process, you'll develop friends within your group and friends with the leaders of that group. And so I would just say, give it a try.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to
You got it,
share your
Caitlin.
guide profile and your Boston by Foot tour guide volunteer story, Dan. It's been great getting to know you on this deeper level, and hopefully we'll have you with us for many years to come.
I would like that. Yes, thank you, Katrin.